my advice to anybody is that if a mandatory evacuation is given, take heed to it. That's not a decision that's taken lightly. We realize that a lot of times leaving your home in itself is a scary situation, and there are some unknowns associated with that. However, given the information and the data that we have, we think that that is your best chance for survival.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beaumont Beat video podcast, where we move with the heartbeat of the city. I'm your host, Tracy Koenig, broadcasting from the EOC, the city's Emergency Operations Center, housed inside the municipal court. Now, this is an area that most citizens don't really ever get to see, but it's here that the city employees come together during planned and unplanned events to ensure a community's safety. So today we'll be talking with Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator Shaqueena Nobles and finding out all the things that she does to make sure that the city is prepared for incidents like major weather events, and also what you can do as a resident to stay prepared during hurricane season, which runs from June 1st until November 30th. But before we get into all that, one quick announcement for you. We're excited about the recent opening of the Beaumont Police Department's Real-Time Crime Center. They call it the Neighborhood Watch of the 21st century, and it is ready to help officers solve all types of crimes across the city. But of course, we can't do that without your help. So we'd like to invite you to register your cameras or connect them to our system. That way you can be a part of keeping our city safe. We have a video that explains exactly what the Real-Time Crime Center does, and you can check it out on our Facebook and YouTube pages. Now let's get to today's show. Shaqueena is here joining us today. And first of all, Shaqueena, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how long you've been here, and exactly what goes into running the EOC?
Well, hello, Tracy, and thank you for having me. I have been with the city now for 11, going on about 12 years here. And when I started with the city, I came in as an emergency management specialist, and through time and years and experience as we get them with the disasters and emergencies we face, I was promoted to Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator. And so what I do right now on a day-to-day basis is I actually manage and administers the city's emergency management program. And what that entails is basically making sure that the existing plans and procedures that we have in place, they are up to date, they are in accordance with state and federal regulations. I'm dealing with disaster response. I organize and coordinate training for our first responders so that if a disaster or an emergency occurs, it's not the first time that they're dealing with that. And we've kind of worked out some of the kinks there.
So it's not just severe weather. You have to make sure that our plants are safe, that our ports are safe, that our interstates don't have any major issues. Talk a little bit about the difference between a disaster then and an emergency. So
a disaster is usually more of an emergency incident that is widespread. It can impact multiple jurisdictions, or it could be so large, it caused such a large impact that it has a lot of economic damage. It's things that causes those types of significant disruptions. Whereas an emergency, so to speak, is along those same things, but it's more localized, or it's related maybe just to a small subsect or a small community, but it still is a big impact. For instance, in 2019, the TPC explosion, that was considered a more of a local emergency versus an actual disaster because it was kind of confined to that area, but it still made just as much of a noise into many of the people who were impacted for that. That was a disaster for them.
Sure.
So those are the ways that we try to look at the differences between a disaster and emergency and how we kind of categorize those.
So what happens when there is a disaster or an emergency? Kind of talk us through the timeline. Like what happens? Do you get the information first? If not, how does it come through? And then how do you disseminate people to go to the right places?
So when the information kind of comes in, there are a variety of different ways as emergency managers that we get information. We get them through a risk assessment. We get them through a hazard and vulnerability analysis. So that way we can identify what our hazards are. We know what we're dealing with. And then as we have advanced technology that gives us information, gives us advanced warning, we can take and compile that information and then push that out to citizens. Especially whenever there's a hazard or a potential hazard that's actually threatening the community. And so when those types of things happen, we push that through social media. We push that through the State of Texas Emergency Alerting Network. If we have to, we would go door to door. That's even in our communications plan or our warning plan, how we're going to get a warning out to the citizens.
I want to get to hurricane season now because, of course, we're in hurricane season, and FEMA has recognized our area for our resiliency and for the ways that we've been able to get through some of those storms, our plans that we have in place in our recovery process. Talk a little bit about those things.
We're so good at doing it because we've done it many a times. And the recognition that we've gotten from FEMA, again, it comes from repetition. It comes from having so many different experiences in responding to these disasters and then recovering from these disasters, rebuilding the community and getting back on our feet. And so some of the recognition that we have usually comes through our mitigation awards and all of the different projects that you've seen, like the riverfront development. It was extremely damaged during Harvey, and that mitigation project, that effort to restore that and rebuild that is how FEMA kind of recognizes what we do on the public assistance side of disaster response and mitigation.
Okay, and it's not just during hurricanes that you have that disaster preparedness. I was watching, like, during the 4th of July, there's a lot that goes into those types of citywide events. Talk a little bit about that.
Right, because the things that go into those types of events, if something was to happen there, that would quickly become a disaster or an emergency. And so we pre-plan. We treat it as if it is, so that we're already on the ground. We're already there. We can already elicit and start getting those responses there to those types of incidents. So that's what we called major events. And those major events, when we have the propensity or the possibility for like a large scale incident to occur, we will put emergency response measures in place. We start planning for that. Usually if it's a vendor outside of the city, like it's not a city sponsored event, we'll bring those vendors in and we'll have them discuss their plans. What city services are going to be impacted? How can we best assist you so that while everyone is out having fun and having a great time, they're also doing it in a safe manner? We have measures in place just to kind of make sure everything's flows smoothly, and so that no one gets hurt or there isn't any type of mass incident or anything like that happens in there.
Yeah, and people want to know that, right? They want to feel like they can go out to these big events, whether it be Mardi Gras or a 5K or whatever it is, and know that there are eyes watching to make sure that they're safe. Well, we're going to switch gears real quickly and talk a little bit about what you can do at home to make sure that you're prepared should something like a hurricane head our direction. But first, we have another quick announcement for you. Registration is now open for the fall session of the Beaumont Police Department's Citizen Police Academy. Now, it's a free 15-week program. It starts August 15th. Classes are held every Thursday night from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Now, they're designed to give residents an inside look into the responsibilities and the challenges of our local law enforcement. It's an eye-opening experience that goes beyond what you might see on TV or read in the newspaper, or firsthand look into those complex issues that our brave officers face every day. You'll learn about things like traffic and patrol, 911, and emergency management. If you're interested, you can apply today at police.beaumonttexas.gov/CPA. And as always, you can stream this show and past episodes of the Beaumont Beat on multiple platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Subscribe to our channel, like this episode, and share it with others so they too can enjoy it. And we're always looking for new topics, so drop us a comment to let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes. Now back to our conversation with Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator Shaqueena Nobles. Of course, hurricane season, as we mentioned, Shaqueena, is here. It's upon us right now. And citizens, there are certain things that citizens can do to get prepared. Let's talk about, first of all, maybe the documents that you need to get in your hand and know exactly where they are should a hurricane come and you need to evacuate.
The documents, for instance, that is one of my big takes. If you've ever been at any of my community presentations or I've been out and about, I always talk about documents that you need to have prepared. And those documents include important documents to you, but specifically, you definitely need to have things like birth certificates and your identification cards and your insurance policies. I'm always telling people that if we have to evacuate for a hurricane, take it as a hurricane. there's nothing that you can do while the storm is going on. And for your own peace of mind, you can have those type of documents with you and start reviewing those documents, right? So that when you come back, you are pretty clear about what your policy information is in there and how you should have started communications with your insurance agency and things like that.
Okay, and what about getting your homes ready, your cars ready before a storm comes? What kind of recommendations do you give there?
So my first recommendation there is to keep your gas tanks half full. I think you've already stated that hurricane season starts June 1st, right? So the entire summer, we should be having our gas tanks at least half full. That way you can have at least a half a tank of gas in the event that you have to leave and you can't go. It'll get you a good distance. Another thing you can do is also make sure that your car is maintained. Make sure you have your oil changed. And that's some advice that I actually give from personal experiences, because before I was emergency manager, I was a citizen just like us, just like you. And I had to evacuate. And when I did evacuate it, I needed an oil change. I hadn't checked my battery in my car, and there were all these different things that was happening, and it really surfaced. So those are things you can do to get your vehicle prepared in case you have to get on the road. Another thing for your homes that you can do is to take inventory. A lot of times pictures and videos are worth 1,000 words.
And especially for insurance too.
Correct.
To show what was there before and
Correct. What it looked like, those before and afters. And so you want to take inventory of your home. That's one of the best things that you can do to have your home prepared, is to do that. And share that information, right? Keep it on your phones, your computers, but also share it with your insurance agent and make sure that they have it. That way it's already there. And then another thing that you can do to prepare your home is to bring in like things that are not bolted down. If you can't bolt it down, bring it in. Those things become what I like to call backyard missiles. And not only could they do damage to your property, but they can do damage to your neighbor's property as well. And it's just a good neighborly thing to do, is to do those types of things there. I know a lot of people board up their homes and board up their windows, and all of that are great things to do to prepare your home for severe weather.
And then also cleaning out your refrigerator. That can be a problem when you come back. It's
that can. But you know what? A good way to prepare your refrigerator is to, in the summer months, buy what you need, keep what you need, and don't overstock, because that way you don't have like freezers full of
meat products,
mm-hmm. and things like that will spoil. And so that's a personal tip that even I follow, in my house now in the wintertime when you're eating more heartily and all those different types of things. You can do, you can store a little bit more, but you should really try to, for home preparation purposes, just kind of keep what you need, what you're going to use.
What about those to-go kits? What do you recommend for people to say, okay, what do I take with me? What types of things will I need on the road?
So you want to take some non-perishable food items. A good rule of thumb is to plan for your go kit to be at least 3 to 4 days. That will get you kind of where you need to be in the event. Some things that you can keep in your go kit are going to be things like a first aid kit, things like a bio bag, things like that in your go kit that you can need. You can put your important documentation in there. Non-perishable foods can go in there. One thing that I always remind people to take is their cell phone chargers. How often are you go and you're like, oh my gosh, my phone is dead, And so having those things, extra batteries, flashlights, all of those things are good to go. But we've become so heavily dependent on our cell phones, and they are our primary source of communication. Make sure that you have a way to charge those, whether it's a vehicle charger or it's a wall charger that you can charge whenever you get to wherever you're going.
Okay, and I think another important thing, know which evacuation route you're going to take, what our evacuation routes are, right? And then knowing where you're going to go.
Correct. And that's all part of having a family plan in the event that you have to evacuate. And that goes back to knowing where you're going to go, knowing if you're going to have to meet up with your family or something somewhere. All of those things are great for keeping yourself prepared.
Okay, now I want to talk about registering yourself with the STAN, the Southeast Texas Alerting Network, or STAN. Tell people what that is.
So the Southeast Texas Alerting Network is our way to communicate directly with you. If there is something going on in your neighborhood, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a disaster, anything, it is our way to be able to notify the public of what's going on or anything that's in their area. Any pertinent information, you will get a direct call from a local number that will be us. We try our best to make sure that it is an actual voice that you hear and not like a robocall, so that you know this is a real call. It usually starts off, this is a message from your organization. That's usually the first thing that you hear. That's actually a legitimate call. When you get that call from us, though, it will be followed by either information, instructions. So I encourage people to make sure that they listen to the message in its entirety, so that they can follow whatever necessary prompts. But that is the number one way to be able to communicate with our office and for our office to communicate with you.
Okay. And sometimes people have loved ones in their family that need extra assistance. Maybe they're wheelchair bound or they're immobile. There's a separate registration for that, right, with STEER. Tell us about that.
Correct. So STEER is the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. And what that registry does is it allows for people who have maybe access or functional needs, who maybe require a little bit more attention or a little bit more time. We actually use it as a planning tool, because if I don't know that you have special needs or you have functional needs, then I can't plan for them. And so what it does is before a disaster or before an emergency ever occurs, they can actually call, they can register, and they can answer all of the questions. And it will ask you, do you need assistance evacuations? Are you medically dependent on power? In all of those different types of questions. And what that does is that lets us know what your needs are, regardless of the disaster, regardless of the emergency, so that we can best plan to assist you.
Okay, I just want to end with this. I know a lot of times people say, I can't leave. I don't want to leave my home. I want to make sure everything's safe here. What would be your recommendation? You kind of mentioned, if I make it a hurricane, what about people that choose to stay? When is the last time that they can actually call for assistance? Because when you get into that really, if we had a Category 4 hurricane coming, there's a certain amount of time where they're not going to be able to give you that assistance. Should you say, oh, wait, I want to get out now? Talk about that.
So when conditions are no longer safe for our first responders to be out, we pull them in, and they're going to be in until conditions are better and they can actually get out, and conditions actually warrant them getting out. And then once they get out, our priorities is, of course, life safety. So we'll start search and rescue operations, but we're also surveying the city infrastructure so that we can call people back. So my advice to anybody is that if a mandatory evacuation is given, take heed to it. I can tell you from experience, when we advise the mayor or the city administration that a mandatory evacuation is needed, that's not a decision that's taken lightly. We realize that people don't want to leave their homes, and we realize that a lot of times leaving your home in itself is a scary situation, and there are some unknowns associated with that. However, given the information and the data that we have, we think that that is your best chance for survival. So if a mandatory evacuation is called, then we encourage you to take it, because once those conditions get to a point where it's unsafe for first responders, then we have to wait until it is safe for them to be out and about. And the last thing that any first responder, anybody that does anything in emergency management wants to see or experience is the loss of a citizen, because without our citizens, then where would we be?
Yeah, excellent point. I know you've seen a lot in almost 12 years here in Southeast Texas doing what you do. Any last words that you'd want to leave with the citizens about what you do or what you think they need to know?
The only thing that I would want to say is that it takes us as a community. This office, we don't work alone. We partner with the county's emergency management program. We partner with the Texas Division of Emergency Management. We partner with FEMA. But more importantly, we partner with our citizens. The more informed they are, the more information they have, the more engaged they are with our emergency preparedness efforts, the better off we will be. And we might manage the disaster and manage the day-to-day operations. However, to be effective at it, we need our citizens. We need the support of our citizens, and we need them to trust us, and we need them to have the confidence that we're acting in their best interest.
Where should they go to get all that information?
They can visit the City of Beaumont, beaumonttexas.gov website, and click on the emergency management link. Within that link or within that page, it is a lot of useful information about building a plan for if you have a business, building a family plan. There are links to be able to register with the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. There's also links to register your cell phones with STAN. So there's a lot of information there that'd be very useful and beneficial for them.
All right. Thank you, Shaqueena. We appreciate all you do for the community and for being our special guest today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And before we go, we have one final announcement for you. Students will be heading back to school soon, but before summer ends, we want to remind you that the city's pools and splash pads are open through Labor Day. Cattail Marsh has weekly kids crafts and activities available for families, and there are still dates for movies in the park and classic movie nights at the Jefferson Theater for you to enjoy. So follow us on social media platforms for all those dates and times. For now, though, we hope you've enjoyed learning more about what the city does to keep you safe, and we hope that you'll join us again for another future podcast. For now, I'm Tracy Kennick. Thanks for tuning in to the Beaumont Beat, where we move with the heartbeat of the city. We'll see you next time.